For thousands of years they've stood. The pyramids. Silent. Watching. Whispering. Not just of kings, but of something coming. This isn't just stone. This is signal. And maybe it wasn't meant for then. Maybe it was meant for now. A revelation told in shadow in Scripture. From Genesis to Giza. From Eden to the end. We'll follow the thread through prophecy. Forgotten wisdom. Ancient empires. And the fire that falls before the king returns. We'll walk with Moses through Egypt. Sit with Daniel in Babylon. Listen as Elijah calls down fire. And look toward the skies, because they're speaking too. And when the dust settles, there might just be a book left behind, written in fire and stone, to carry what couldn't fit on the screen. So stay close. Eyes open, spirit ready, because what you're about to see was never just history. It was always prophecy. What if they were right?
Okay, major breaking news. They have just discovered something insane beneath the pyramids, and it literally just happened this week. I want you guys to look at this, because by using new radar technology from outer space, scientists have found massive hidden structures beneath the pyramids of Giza.
They took this space-based technology and they pointed it to the pyramids to see what was at the base of the pyramids. They found things under the Great Pyramids of Giza.
8 vertically aligned cylindrical structures arranged in 2 parallel rows from north to south.
Whatever this is a uniform structure.
Over 600 meters deep, which then connects to structures that extend up to 2 kilometers below the surface of the ground. 2 kilometers.
The slaves didn't do that.
Look at this.
Crazy.
Wow. This is the Super Bowl for ancient aliens.
What if, beneath Earth's most iconic monument, something ancient has awakened?
It is 7 layers high above the ground and stands about 200 feet tall. We think of it today as a phenomenal architectural project. But for ancient Egyptians, the Step Pyramid of Djoser turned out to be more like a massive experiment, a trial run, if you will, to perfect their building skills before they moved on to even more ambitious pyramids.
Experiments proved that in a resonant state, the pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in the internal chambers as well as under its base. A year after that, in 2019, Eric Wilson published a paper called A Large-Scale Thermal Acoustic Generator. The paper describes how, when granite and other rocks are vibrated, electrons will migrate through the rock and up to the surface.
They search the code. But do you know the cornerstone? It didn't start with digging.
They don't understand what it is because they're just looking at LiDAR images.
But with a signal, a digital whisper from the stars.
Synthetic aperture is a radar that allows you to view 3-dimensional images. The synthetic aperture radar for the pyramid would have basically required a 12-kilometer antenna. Now you know that putting a 12-kilometer antenna into orbit is no easy feat. Until a man, more than 70 years ago named Wiley, made a new technique available. He made the satellite move along a 12-kilometer arc, this kind of aperture. And this person came very close to the discovery that we eventually made.
In 2025, Italian researchers claimed to detect 8 spiraling shafts beneath the Khafre pyramid. well. That's the man of the hour, Professor Corrado Malanga, physicist, truth chaser, and the one stirring up the sand in all the right ways. While most folks were digging dirt, Corrado and his crew, Armando May, Filippo Biondi, Nicole Chicolo, turned their eyes skyward. Synthetic aperture radar, spaceborne, ground-piercing, storytelling without a shovel. They weren't chasing myths, they were following the math. That pyramid everyone's jawing about ain't the big dog, not Khufu, it's his brother, Khafre. Built on higher ground, sharper slope, still crowned in limestone after 4,500 years. The middle child of Giza, but maybe the one that holds the key. And while Corrado's team scanned from orbit, Dr. Sarah Parcak was already out there, miles high in mind, if not in altitude. Space archaeologist, TED Prize winner, mapped lost cities from space, built a global army of digital explorers. She's not tied to this find, but she's been uncovering wonders all over the world.
Guest is the 2016 TED Prize winner. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Parcak. So explain to the people out there what a space archaeologist is. You don't do archaeology in space, you use space for archaeology, right?
Right, so think about what would happen if Indiana Jones and Google Earth had a love child, right? So like,
I'm thinking about it, thinking about it. Okay.
So I use high resolution and NASA satellites and look for subtle differences on the surface of the Earth that locate buried ancient pyramids and towns and ancient tombs, which we then go and excavate. So it allows us to pinpoint exactly where to go from thousands of miles away.
People like Indiana Jones out of business because these are the guys who like train with the bullwhip and the machete to go through the jungle to find things, but you're using these satellite imagery.
That's right, we're able to look and use different parts of the light spectrum. It's basically like a space-based CAT scan. What we're seeing right here is the ancient site of Tanis. It's about 2 hours to the northeast of Cairo.
Tanis?
This is Tanis, the famous Tanis.
Tanis from Indiana Jones, from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You found Tanis?
What's amazing to me as an archaeologist is the more and more I study, the more I realize that we are resilient, we are creative, we are brilliant, and this is what makes us human, and that has not changed since we've been human.
Because sometimes the biggest truths don't come with headlines, they come with patience and pixels. So how do you read history without flipping a single stone? You listen to the silence between the cracks, to echoes that hum beneath your feet. Let's dig a little deeper and find out how this all works.
Aperture radar is a powerful remote sensing technique that utilizes radar waves to capture detailed images of the Earth's surface. Unlike synthetic aperture radar operates independently of daylight and weather conditions, making it ideal for continuous monitoring. Here's how synthetic aperture radar works. A synthetic aperture radar system emits microwave pulses towards the Earth's surface from a radar antenna mounted on a satellite or aircraft. As the radar waves bounce off the Earth's surface, they are reflected back to the satellite's antenna. The satellite measures the time it takes for the signals to return and their intensity, forming a radar image of the observed area. Synthetic aperture radar can penetrate through clouds, fog, rain, and darkness, capturing detailed images of the Earth's surface with pixel sizes ranging from meters to centimeters.
For the nerds, I know you're already buzzing. But for the rest of us, still squinting at the screen, synthetic aperture radar's like tossing a boomerang from space. It bounces off the ground and comes back whispering secrets. It don't need daylight, don't blink in the dark, just listens and draws the unseen, like X-ray goggles for the Earth. In Giza, it just gave up a ghost. Now swing back to Corrado. He's slicing the desert like a birthday cake, one layer at a time, to see what's been baking for 4,500 years.
We looked inside the pyramid. The pyramid basically becomes like a block of numbers. Imagine a cube made of numbers. Then, Like a cake, we can cut it in half. This is a tomographic scan, one of the first ones, where nothing could be understood, because you can see. Without awareness of what you're looking at, you just see patches of color, and you don't understand anything. In reality, we took these tomographic scans and made new ones. We sliced the cake in many directions in many ways.
Two vast crystalline anomalies, bending radar in ways no physics can explain.
All these things, and my mind was going crazy, especially last night. I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking to myself, well, maybe now the pyramids could be the conductor of like natural atmosphere, like lightning going down these columns and being banked into these, like, what was it, 80-meter square blocks. You know, maybe they're like the harnessing of the power. I don't know, man. My mind was going like a bit crazy last night about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mainstream voices, like Dr. Zahi Hawass, moved quickly to shut it down. Dr. Zahi Hawass. If you're talking pyramids, his name comes up fast. Former Minister of Antiquities, Egypt's man on the inside, the voice of the official story.
That I will reveal the mystery of ancient Egypt.
He's led the digs, guarded the tombs, stood in chambers that haven't seen light in thousands of years. When the world wants answers about ancient Egypt, they go to him. So when whispers rise about hidden chambers, lost cities beneath the sand, folks look to Hawass. But he isn't buying it. Says it's all wrong, unscientific, unfounded. And maybe that's worth pausing on. Because if there's anyone you'd expect to speak up about a discovery like this, it's him. But he's not. He's shutting the door. Which leaves us with a question. Is he protecting the truth, or just the version he's always known? But others remembered what was already there.
Has that been achieved conventionally? I mean, today? Is there a thing called an electron harvester?
I think that actually, when you look at a generator, that's an electron harvester, because we don't create electrons, we just harvest them. It's just how we do it. You have a windmill, you have a generator inside it, and then you're collecting electrons off the commutator in a generator.
And that's where the electricity comes from.
And that's your electricity.
The Osiris shaft, submerged, ancient, and very real.
You consider the location. The moat sits in an area that could easily have been flooded by runoff water from nearby plains, carefully carved out of the rock and connected by tunnels. These compartments likely served as a part of a water treatment system, where water would flow from one compartment to the next, getting cleaner as it moved along. Now, here is where things start to tie into the pyramid itself.
No mummies, listen to me, no mummies whatsoever have been found in the Great Pyramid or any of the major pyramids. Historically, these massive structures have been thought to be royal tombs, but the fact that no mummies have ever been found here suggests that the pyramids might not have even been tombs in the first place. In fact, some researchers now propose that the pyramids could have served another purpose entirely. Maybe they could have been energy generators, they say, or places of spiritual or scientific significance.
So if you actually take the length of the Great Pyramid at its mean socket level, which is the corners of the actual building, it translates into 365.24 pyramid cubits, which just happens to be the Earth a year right down to a quarter day.
The Great Pyramid directly corresponds to the circumference of the equator, as well as the measurement from the equator to the pole.
Engineer Christopher Dunn says it was never a tomb. but a machine.
So these names, the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber, you don't think that that's actually a King's Chamber or a Queen's Chamber? You think it's something else?
Well, out of respect to the Egyptians, I
call it what they say
call
it is.
them. Yeah.
The initial surface of the Great Pyramid is covered in smooth limestone, and apparently it would collect insane amounts of light.
If it was finished and depending on the polish that it received, yeah, it could.
Do you think that had something to do with the design of this power plant?
I don't think there's any part of that pyramid that did not serve a practical function.
The various shafts, the southern shaft, the northern shaft, and these shafts have been described as portals to stars because people have looked up through there, and you go through the shaft, you see stars. But what you're saying is something entirely different. What do you think these shafts were for?
Well, I think they serve two different purposes. For the southern shaft and the northern shaft of the Queen's Chamber, that was a huge mystery to me. And what were they doing? I mean, if you look at the details, the facts of their design and what the ancient Egyptians were doing, why they designed them that way, you have two conduits coming into a chamber, but they're not connected to the chamber. Their original design had them ending 5 inches before coming into the chamber. So you had like 5 inches of limestone that was left in the block.
So did someone remove that limestone?
Yes.
Why did they do that?
Wayman Dixon, it is reported, so the legend goes, noticed a crack in the wall. And so he took a rod and pushed it through the crack. So he had his worker come in, Bill Grundy, with a hammer and chisel, and say, chisel the limestone around that.
God, people are stupid.
Granite rich in quartz.
You can see on the right that kind of series of little boxes which are like steps. Those steps are actually the internal structure of the pyramid. You can see how it was reconstructed on the right? From the 3D model. And the pyramid is made of steps. And essentially, inside these steps were filled in. Originally, they were completely invisible, and everything, the pyramid looked like a mirror from above. If the ancients, 14,000 or 13,000 years ago, had had a satellite, they would have seen the pyramid as a mirror from above, reflecting the light. Zahi Hawass says, "We've known for 10 years that there are holes in the pyramid, but the fact that there are holes doesn't mean that there are rooms." Or to continue with what Zahi Hawass says, indirect measurements? Yes. All these nice studies are very interesting, but they can't be validated. Because to validate them, you'd have to remove some stones and go check if these rooms you claim to have found through indirect measurements actually exist.
It encodes pi, the golden ratio, even the spiral blueprint of life itself.
Pi defines the ratio between the diameter and the circumference of a circle. The golden ratio is something frequently found in nature, including the geometry of the human body. It can be found by an interesting simple procedure. Take two numbers and add the second number to the first. Then add the sum to the second number and keep repeating this. The ratio of two consecutive numbers will approach the golden ratio and eventually give a very precise value.
Chambers humming with harmonic resonance.
And it all goes back to Tesla, right? Saki Andy was going through some of Tesla's, I guess you could call them his less famous writings, his notes.
Yeah, and Tesla didn't just see a big pile of rocks. He saw something way more complex. Like, he called the pyramid a giant resonator. Basically, something that could capture and then, like, radiate the Earth's natural energy.
So Tesla's seeing this thing as an energy device, even back then. Wow.
Yeah, and Sasaki Andi actually found this quote from Tesla. I think it sums it up perfectly. Tesla said, "The pyramid is not just stone. It is a giant resonator. capturing the pulse of the Earth and radiating it back as energy.
That is a powerful quote.
Maybe it's memory, echoes, whispers in the deep. Waiting to be heard, but not all are listening. Like Hawass and others. Some still guard the old gates. Not with swords, but with shrugs. With tired eyes and older maps. They say it's noise, artistry. Clickbait wrapped in mystery. Smoke, and dare we say, mirrors.
Human-made structures here. If these were all pillars of consistent materials that they were built out of, would they not show the same signal going all the way up for all of them if they were man-made in a consistent way? No, what they have is data, which as we've seen is not trustworthy data for this method below a depth of 2 meters. And then they have data and they say, if I squinted it and then I create some beautiful artistic interpretation of it, and then I create a video with some fancy music and la-da-da-da-da, I can go viral in today's world where this is what everybody's been waiting for. They're interested in going viral to get money, to keep doing their stuff. That is what they want to do. This is what people with very minimal data would like to do.
But this isn't about sides. It's about sight. In an age drunk on headlines, we're chasing something deeper. Not viral truth, eternal truth. So we ask the only questions that still matter. What's real? What's noise? What's holy? We're not here to stir the pot. We're here to part the veil. We don't follow the hype. We follow him. Eyes open. Spirit sharp. Listening. They chase signs. Mine wore sawdust and crowns, not theories.
He says, for if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to Tartarus, it's translated hell in your English Bible, but the Greek word is Tartarus, and it's the only place that word appears in the Bible. I'll come back to that. And delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, and he goes on. So Peter does a couple of things here. He again alludes to the angels that sinned. They're cast into Tartarus, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And they're reserved for a final judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah. In other words, he ties that event to the days of Noah. Who built the pyramids? The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Stonehenge in Britain, and the circle of the Rephaim in the Golan. They're up in the Golan Heights. There's an unexplored monument we discovered up there that is called the Gilgal Rephaim. Who are the Rephaim? About 155 meters in diameter. Dated to about 3000 BC. It's built on a flat plateau. And by the way, you can only detect its architecture from above, strangely. If you study classic Greek mythology, you run into the Titan. We're partly terrestrial and partly celestial. They rebelled against their father Uranus, and after a prolonged contest were defeated by Zeus and condemned where? Into Tartarus. You see a parallel brewing here? I'm going to suggest to you that the legends of the ancient Greeks embody the truth of what really happened in the past, that there were these strange creatures, generating hybrids that the Greek called titans.
They say history's carved in stone, but sometimes the stone starts talking back. And this time, it said more than just kings and tombs and timelines. This wasn't just a chamber or a shaft. It was a pulse, a tremor. Like the desert itself remembered something and chose this moment to whisper it loud. Now I'm no preacher, but let me lay out a verse for you. The stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Psalm 1:18-22. Think on that for a minute. A stone rejected becomes the cornerstone, not just of a temple, but of a truth too big to stay buried. Some say that pillar in Isaiah's vision, the altar in Egypt, is just a metaphor. But what if it's not? What if it's real? What if it's been sitting there this whole time, waiting for eyes that finally want to see? Moses stood on this sand. Slaves cried out. God answered. Miracles burned from bush and sky. And here we are again, watching old stones tremble with new light. You don't have to believe it, but you'll feel it in your bones, in your blood, and maybe, just maybe, in your spirit. If you're still with me, and you've made it this far down the rabbit hole, you already know this story ain't done talking. And if you want to hear what it says next, well, you know what to do. The prophet Isaiah spoke of a pillar in Egypt, a silent witness in stone. Not just relics, but revelation. A clock beneath the sand, counting down. Before Egypt carved its gods, before Babel reached for heaven, God had already spoken, a script older than stone, still echoing now. It's time we read it. Chapter 2. Ancient Civilizations and Prophetic Relevance. Waiting. All you've got to do is click it. Coming next, we'll stay close to the stone and share what surfaces in his time, not ours.